Ethan Caldwell stood in front of his bathroom mirror, barely recognizing the stranger staring back at him. The sharp lines of his perfectly trimmed designer stubble had been overtaken by a patchy, unkempt beard that aged him 10 years. His once carefully styled hair was now messy, dull, and slightly greasy, hidden beneath a worn-out baseball cap that had clearly seen better days. The tailored suits he had worn with pride for over a decade were replaced by a pair of thrift store jeans and a faded t-shirt that still carried the faint, musty scent of its previous owner. "Who are you trying to fool?" he muttered under his breath, adjusting the fake glasses resting crookedly on his nose. The question wasn't rhetorical. As the founder and CEO of Caldwell Luxury Brands, Ethan had built an empire. Billion-dollar contracts, global prestige, a symbol of modern elegance. But the past few months had left cracks in that glossy image. It started with emails. Anonymous, blunt, allegedly from workers at his main distribution warehouse in Phoenix. Claims of theft, exploitation, abuse, the kind of stories he never imagined could take place under his leadership. The board had advised the usual course: bring in a third-party investigator, conduct interviews, issue a report. But Ethan knew better. He'd seen too many documentaries, read too many sanitized executive memos to believe that surface-level investigations did anything but drive the truth deeper underground. If he wanted to know what was really happening inside his company, he couldn't go as a CEO. He had to vanish. He had to become James Turner. That morning, as he gripped the steering wheel of a dented 2010 Honda Civic he bought in cash, the absurdity of the situation wasn't lost on him. No security detail, no assistant, no voice-activated luxury SUV. Just him, behind the wheel, wearing second-hand clothes and a fake identity. Ahead of him loomed the warehouse, massive, steel gray and cold. He had visited many times before, always through the polished executive entrance, always welcomed by practiced smiles and handshakes. Not today. Today he walked shoulder to shoulder with the workers, their postures hunched, their faces half asleep, clutching cheap gas station coffee like lifelines. "A new guy, James Turner, right?" The voice cut through the morning fog. A woman with a clipboard approached him briskly. Her badge read Linda Martinez, HR coordinator. Her expression was as blank as her voice. "Follow me. Orientation starts in 5 minutes. And Marcus hates late people." Ethan nodded, falling in line behind her as they wove through the industrial maze. He made mental notes with every step. The first red flag hit hard. There were no safety barriers where there should have been. Stacked pallets leaned dangerously close to open walkways. Workers moved between forklifts without vests. The budget for safety equipment had been approved by Ethan himself less than a year ago. Where had that money gone? The orientation room was hot, cramped, and smelled faintly of ammonia and coffee grounds. 20 other new hires sat silently in plastic chairs, their faces either anxious or resigned. Ethan took a seat in the back. Minutes passed. Then the door burst open and a man walked in, already scowling. "Welcome to your first day of hell," he announced, without a hint of irony. Nervous laughter spread through the room. The man, Marcus, presumably paced slowly. "I'm not your friend. I'm not your therapist. I'm here to make sure you work. If you don't keep up, there's a line out that door filled with people who will." When he paused, Ethan raised his hand. He forced his voice to tremble just slightly. The listing mentioned regular breaks, overtime compensation too. Marcus cut him off with a harsh laugh. "Listen, glasses. If you're already asking about breaks, maybe this ain't the job for you. You want breaks? Go work at Google." Ethan felt the room shift. The new hires sank lower in their seats. No one else spoke up. He felt his face flush with heat, part embarrassment, part rage. This wasn't how his company was supposed to treat people. This wasn't what he built. The rest of the day spiraled. Training was a joke. Workers were thrown straight onto the floor with little guidance. Ethan was assigned to the loading dock, where he met Rick, a bulky, smug warehouse veteran who seemed to enjoy making others feel small. "Hey everyone, Harvard here can't even work a pallet jack," Rick bellowed, pointing at Ethan. "Maybe he should go back to his books." Laughter echoed off the concrete walls. It shouldn't have stung, but it did. It reminded Ethan of what it felt like to be powerless. His lunch break, which was supposed to be 45 minutes, lasted 22. He sat alone on a splintered bench, sore and sweating. That's when he overheard two supervisors whispering about a special shipment that needed to be processed off the books. The words hit his gut like a punch. When they noticed him listening, one of them, David according to his badge, approached. "You got a hearing problem, new guy?" he asked, leaning in close. Friendly advice. Keep your head down if you want to last. By the time Ethan dragged himself back into his car that evening, his hands were blistered, his back ached, and his mind was spinning. He had expected to find carelessness, maybe even small-time theft. But this felt like a system designed to silence and exploit. He hadn't uncovered a broken policy. He had found a machine built to break people. Back in his penthouse, the contrast was disorienting. The city glittered below him, his kitchen counters gleamed, but all he could think about was the warehouse, the suffocating heat, the broken spirits, the silent suffering. He sat at his laptop, typing notes through trembling fingers. Then his phone buzzed. A new email. "Hope you enjoyed your first day, James. Remember, some questions are dangerous to ask." He stared at the screen, his heart pounding. They didn't know who he really was, that much was clear. But they were watching. The game had changed. As he lay in bed that night, Ethan's mind wouldn't rest. How deep did this go? Who could he trust? Most terrifying of all, how had he let his company become something he didn't recognize? Sleep never came, but something else did. Resolve. Tomorrow he would return. Tomorrow he would dig deeper. The next few days were worse than the first. Each sunrise brought with it another layer of rot. On the third day, he witnessed Sarah, a pregnant worker, collapse from exhaustion. She'd been denied a break again. As Ethan helped her to her feet, a supervisor barked at him for wasting time. Sarah gripped his arm, her voice trembling. "Don't worry about me. I need this job. For my baby." The defeat in her eyes shattered something in him. In his second week, the corruption turned financial. He overheard Marcus, yes, the same orientation bully, bragging in the office about his new boat. "These idiots don't even realize their insurance premiums fund our bonus pool," he said, laughing. "Best scam we've ever pulled." Ethan felt physically ill. He'd allocated $2,000, 0 cents per employee annually for healthcare. With over 200 workers, they were siphoning hundreds of thousands. Then, on a brutal afternoon, he was assigned to the high-value storage area, millions in luxury watches and handbags. "Hey, Turner," Tom Wheeler barked. "These watches need logging and moving. You've got 30 minutes. Ethan frowned. "But policy says 2 people. Wheeler's face darkened. "Look at this guy, Professor Safety over here. You teaching me how to do my job?" He snatched Ethan's clipboard and flung it across the room. 25 minutes now, clock's ticking. As Ethan scrambled to comply, he noticed something. The numbers didn't match. There were supposed to be 50 watches. He only counted 42. He tried to speak up. "You accusing me of something?" Wheeler growled, shoving him hard against the metal shelf. "You're one mistake away from being fired. You think they'll believe some dropout who can't even lift a box?" But it wasn't just the threat that chilled Ethan. It was the gleam in Wheeler's eyes. This wasn't about power. This was about pleasure. And Ethan knew, with absolute certainty, that the corruption had only just begun to show its face. The warehouse ventilation system, which should have serviced the entire facility, was barely running at half capacity. The stale air was thick with dust and chemical residue, coating every breath with discomfort. Workers had begun developing coughs and tight chests, early signs of something more serious, but every time someone raised a complaint, it vanished from the HR records like it had never existed. Late one night, after a punishing 14-hour shift, Ethan found himself alone in the break room, the flickering fluorescent lights buzzing faintly above. Sitting across from him was Miguel, a weathered worker who'd been with the company for 8 years. His hands trembled as he cracked open his third energy drink of the day, the aluminum can hissing as if in protest. "You know what the worst part is?" Miguel said, barely above a whisper. Ethan looked at him, waiting. 5 years ago, this was a good place to work. Benefits, reasonable hours, real safety protocols. People looked out for each other. Miguel took a sip, eyes distant. Then the new management team came in, said they were going to streamline things, cut waste, improve productivity, and now we're just numbers on a spreadsheet. Ethan's stomach churned. That new management team had been his initiative. He'd brought in consultants to optimize operations, convinced they would enhance productivity without sacrificing values. But somewhere along the line, humanity had been stripped out of the equation. The guilt tightened in his chest. That breaking point arrived days later. He was heading toward the loading bay when he found Lisa, a young worker, huddled behind a stack of crates. She was crying, shoulders trembling, trying to stay hidden. "My doctor told me to rest," she whispered when Ethan asked what was wrong. "My back's messed up from the lifting. I filed for compensation. They said if I took time off, I'd be fired." Her voice cracked. "And now they say my paperwork's missing." She clutched a folded photograph. Her daughter, smiling in a graduation cap. "She starts college next year. I can't lose this job, but some days I can't even walk." That night, Ethan sat in his apartment, cold and silent. He opened his laptop and documented everything. The failing systems, the stolen benefits, the cruelty disguised as policy. The file was growing. Pages of names, quotes, patterns. Still, he felt like he was chasing shadows in a maze of corruption. Then, another message appeared in his inbox. "Getting a bit too curious, James. Remember what happened to the cat. Back off, while you still can." It wasn't a warning anymore. It was a threat. And instead of scaring him off, it hardened his resolve. He scanned every note he'd taken, every time card, every policy that had been twisted beyond recognition. The pattern was too precise to be coincidence, too efficient, too protected. This wasn't a few rogue supervisors pocketing perks. This was something larger. Someone higher was pulling the strings. As he prepared for bed, his phone buzzed again. Midnight shift, high value zone, don't be late. It wasn't his scheduled shift, which meant someone was testing him. Ethan stood in front of the mirror again, adjusting the disguise he'd worn for 2 weeks. But now, it felt less like a costume and more like a second skin. His beard was real, his calluses were real. The lines around his eyes hadn't come from acting. They were born from fatigue, betrayal, and clarity. He wasn't pretending to be one of them anymore. He was one of them. And the difference was, he had the power to end this. As midnight approached, the warehouse was quiet. The normal chaos had died down, leaving only a skeleton crew and long, silent corridors that seemed to stretch forever under flickering lights. The high-value section sat deeper in the building, hidden beneath layers of inventory and forgotten equipment. "Turner." A low voice sliced through the silence. It was Wheeler, stepping out from the darkness between towering racks. "Follow me. Time to earn your keep." He led Ethan through a path he'd never noticed before, hidden behind a stack of shipping containers that formed an artificial wall. Beyond it, a concealed entrance led into a vast, unmarked room. Inside, workers moved with quiet precision, unboxing luxury Caldwell products and repackaging them with nearly identical counterfeits. "Welcome to the real operation," Wheeler said with a smirk. "Consider this your promotion." Ethan stood frozen. The coordination, the efficiency, it was stunning and terrifying. Workers replaced authentic watches, handbags, and jewelry with fakes so convincing that even he had to hold them side by side to tell the difference. The counterfeit craftsmanship was flawless. Ethan's stomach sank as the realization hit. Each swapped item wasn't just a stolen asset. It was a breach of customer trust, of brand identity, of everything Caldwell luxury was supposed to represent. "Beautiful, aren't they?" came another voice. David, the same supervisor who had threatened him on his first day, stepped forward. "Our partners in China have perfected the technique. The buyers, they'll never know." Ethan forced a nod, suppressing the rising bile in his throat. Wheeler handed him 2 watches, one real, one fake. "Your job is quality control. Make sure every switch is seamless. Nothing leaves this room with a trace of tampering." Hours passed. Ethan worked in silence, studying every step of the operation. The genuine goods were sent to black market dealers in Europe and Asia. The fakes, sent through official Caldwell channels to real retailers, none the wiser. The documentation was flawless, because it was real. "We're using the company's own shipping network," David bragged during their break. "Customs never suspects a thing. All the paperwork checks out." Ethan's blood ran cold. This wasn't a theft ring. It was an international smuggling syndicate. And they had embedded themselves deep into his company's infrastructure, from warehouse floor to global logistics. Then, at 3 a.m., a sleek black SUV rolled up to the back of the hidden dock. A man stepped out, briefcase in hand, wearing a tailored coat. Ethan recognized him instantly. Xavier Chen, head of Asian operations, a top executive, a board member, and now a co-conspirator. "Numbers looking good?" Chen asked casually. "Better than ever, sir," Wheeler replied with sudden formality. "We've doubled our output with the midnight shift." Chen nodded. "Excellence deserves reward, but remember, efficiency must never compromise security." Ethan pretended to be focused on his work, angling himself so he could hear more. They discussed upcoming shipping routes, customs clearances, and something called Project Echo. The phrase made both of them lower their voices. It wasn't just a code name. It was something bigger. Then Chen noticed him. "New employee?" "James Turner," Wheeler answered. "Quiet, sharp, doesn't ask questions." Chen stared at Ethan for a long, silent moment. "Make sure he stays that way," he said coldly. "We can't afford loose ends, not with Echo launching next month." After Chen left, the operation resumed with mechanical precision. Ethan began piecing together the final layers. Some workers were brought in specifically for their loyalty or their silence. Others were controlled with threats, death or blackmail, medical records, family histories, financial ruin. They had built a fortress not out of walls but out of fear. Just before sunrise, Ethan made his boldest move yet. While pretending to inspect a shipment, he discreetly planted a hidden camera, one he had smuggled in beneath the sole of his boot. It had a clear angle of the entire room. If he could retrieve it later, the footage would be damning. Suddenly, a commotion erupted in the regular storage area. A worker had found an inventory error. Supervisors panicked, shouting, scrambling, until Wheeler stepped in. "Process error," he declared. "That shipment was rerouted to Singapore. Here's the paperwork." He held up what looked like legitimate documents. But Ethan knew they were fake. The incident revealed their biggest vulnerability. They needed to keep 2 sets of records, one for the real world, one for the black market. If the data ever mismatched, the entire scheme could implode. As Ethan left the warehouse that morning, drained but sharp, he realized the operation was even more dangerous than he feared. Jen's presence meant this wasn't confined to Phoenix. This was global. His phone buzzed again. Message. Welcome to the family, Turner. Remember, loyalty is everything. He had names now, faces, footage. But he also had a deadline. Chen would be attending next week's board meeting. And if Ethan didn't act fast, they would turn everything he built into a weapon against him. The sun rose slowly over Phoenix, casting long orange streaks over the city. And Ethan, exhausted but clear-eyed, made a decision. It was time to set a trap. But first, he had to follow the money, wherever it led, even if it meant stepping into the heart of danger itself. That night, another message came through. Special shipment, Dock 7, 11:00 p.m. His instincts screamed one thing. This was the key, and it was time to unlock the truth. Despite being bone-weary and running on sheer adrenaline, Ethan didn't return home. He drove straight back to the warehouse, his rusted Honda crawling into the farthest, darkest corner of the parking lot. The night was heavy and moonless, draped in a silence that only deepened the weight in his chest. It was the perfect night for watching. Waiting. He stayed still, eyes locked on the loading docks. At exactly 11:00 p.m., a large unmarked truck backed into Dock 7. Ethan leaned forward, already recording. But when the driver's door opened, and the man who stepped out came into view, his breath caught in his throat. Robert Kane, his warehouse manager, his trusted mentor, his friend. For 10 years, Kane had been more than an employee. He was a foundation, present at every milestone, every success. They had shared holidays, drinks, inside jokes. Kane had even stood beside Ethan at the podium, delivering a speech during Ethan's Entrepreneur of the Year award. He had smiled, as if nothing in the world mattered more than this company. And now he stood in the shadows, overseeing the unloading of an illegal shipment with the practiced ease of a man who had done it many times before. Ethan's body moved on instinct, staying low, following from a distance as Kane and a small group pushed boxes through a hidden entrance behind stacked pallets. He had walked this warehouse countless times and never seen this door. The hallway beyond led to a basement, one that wasn't in any blueprint he'd ever signed off on. He crept closer, moving like a phantom through the corridor. Voices echoed upward from below. "The buyers are getting impatient," Kane said. "They want reassurance that Project Echo won't face the same delays." Chen's voice replied, low and cool. "Everything's on schedule. By the time anyone figures out what's happening, Caldwell will be out. He won't know what hit him." Ethan's blood turned to ice. Project Echo wasn't just some smuggling scheme. It was aimed directly at him, designed to destroy him from within. He pressed in closer, breath caught in his throat. "Speaking of our clueless CEO," Kane laughed. "You should see the new policies he's drafting. Fair wages, safety protocols. He's living in a fantasy, has no clue we've been siphoning those funds for years." Chen didn't laugh, but there was amusement in his voice. "That's why we picked this company. Ethan's greatest flaw is that he believes in people. He trusts too easily, surrounds himself with yes men, never questions what happens at the ground level." "The perfect target," Kane muttered. Every sentence stabbed deeper. Every revelation rewrote Ethan's memories. This man, his closest advisor, had been shaping every internal policy, every decision, for years, not to build the company stronger, but to make it easier to exploit. Inside the basement was a sleek operations center, Multiple screens lined the walls, displaying global shipping routes, live warehouse feeds. Except for this room. In the center was a massive table, and on it, the folder Ethan had heard mentioned in whispers. Project Echo. He scanned the documents from the shadows. They weren't just stealing from him. They were planning a corporate coup. Forged documents, faked performance reports, evidence of illegal activity, fabricated and ready for presentation. Kane's voice cut through the shock. The board meeting is critical. Once we show them this evidence, this narrative, they'll have no choice but to vote Ethan out. And then? Chen asked. They'll need a replacement, a man from the inside, a loyal warehouse manager who exposed the rot. Chen smiled. Very neat. And then Ethan's elbow knocked a loose rack. A sharp metallic clang echoed through the space. What was that? Kane barked. Jack the stair. Ethan bolted silently into a dark corner, pressing behind stacked crates just as two guards stormed out, flashlights slicing through the corridor. He held his breath, his heart pounding hard enough to shake his ribs. From below, Kane's voice rose again. Increase security. If anyone gets curious, handle it. I'm not risking everything because some idiot hears the wrong thing. Once the guards passed, Ethan escaped the same way he came in, adrenaline propelling him back to his car. He collapsed into the driver's seat, chest heaving, fingers trembling. Kane had betrayed him. Not just once, not just recently. For years, every staff reshuffle, every efficiency improvement, every promise to make the company better had been calculated to hollow it from the inside out. Back in his penthouse, Ethan opened his laptop with shaking hands and began documenting everything. Shipment schedules, internal memos, surveillance blind spots, the Project Echo documents, the fake inventory trails. But as he worked, a single truth crystallized. Facts weren't enough. Not when Kane had spent years building relationships with the board. Not when he could spin the narrative to paint Ethan as the enemy. And then another text arrived. You should have stayed in your lane, Turner. Accidents happen, even to careful people. It was a threat. Clear, brazen. But in it, Ethan saw opportunity. Kane and Shen believed they were invincible, that he was still playing defense, that he was still hiding. That he'd use their arrogance against them. But first, he needed help. And that meant the biggest risk of all. He had to tell someone who he truly was. But who? Most of the workers had laughed at him, mocked him, dismissed him. Then it hit him. Kane had handpicked everyone who ever rose through the ranks, which meant Ethan's allies weren't at the top. They were at the very bottom. He looked at his reflection in the mirror, worn face, grease-stained shirt, thick-rimmed glasses. And he smiled. Kane had taught him how to run a warehouse. But he'd forgotten the most important lesson. Never underestimate someone you think you've broken. By morning, the trap was set. He started with a tip, anonymous of course, about a special shipment of limited edition Caldwell watches arriving that night. Rare, worth millions. Kane couldn't resist. Then Ethan made the hardest move of all. He approached Sarah. She was sitting in the break room, rubbing her pregnant belly, drinking tea. I need to talk to you, he said. She glanced up, confused. Then he removed his glasses. I'm not James Turner. She stared at him. You're Ethan Caldwell? He nodded. All this time, I've been here, watching, learning. What's happening? It's not just theft. It's organized crime. He didn't ask question. She didn't hesitate. What do you need me to do? At sunset, the plan unfolded. Sarah went to work as usual, but with a hidden earpiece. Her job was precise, caused targeted glitches in the security cameras, timed perfectly with Ethan's instructions. Meanwhile, a corporate audit team, secretly composed of federal agents, waited a block away, posing as executives, ready to move the moment Ethan gave the signal. At 10:00 p.m., the truck arrived. Just as expected, Kane came in person. Chen was there too. Wheeler followed, along with every corrupt supervisor Ethan had identified. The room buzzed with greed. "All in place," Kane said, inspecting the shipment. "Once we swap these with the counterfeits, our Dubai buyers." He was cut off by sudden alarms. Sarah had triggered a breach alert at the main entrance. "Handle it," Chen snapped. "We don't have time for this." Kane rushed out. And that's when Ethan stepped out from the shadows. But this time, he wasn't in a tattered t-shirt. He wore his suit, the one with his initials stitched inside the collar, the one that made boardrooms go silent. "Good evening, gentlemen," he said calmly, stepping into the center of the room. Everyone froze. "I believe those watches belong to my company." His silence cracked. Chen's expression faltered. Ethan gave a slight bow. "James Turner, at your service. Though you might know me better as the CEO you've been stealing from." Wheeler turned to run, but the exit was blocked. Security filled the doorway. One by one, the traitors realized they were trapped. But Chen wasn't finished. He reached into his coat, pulled out a pistol. His hand trembled with rage. "You think you've won? You have no idea what's coming. You don't even know what Project Echo really is." Ethan held his ground. His voice didn't shake. "But I will, and now the world will too." "A call from me," Ethan said coldly, "and every document linking you to the smuggling, the counterfeiting, and Project Echo goes straight to the board." Chen narrowed his eyes, trying to gauge if Ethan was bluffing. Kane's voice tried to steady itself behind the growing tension. "I've been very thorough. Every document shows your name, Ethan. You're the one they'll burn." Ethan smiled and slowly pulled a flash drive from his pocket, holding it between his fingers like a dagger. "You mean these documents?" He tossed it lightly to Chen's feet. "Sarah found them in your office about an hour ago. Amazing how much people trust a pregnant woman to clean private offices without supervision." Before anyone could respond, a loud crash echoed from above. Kane had realized the trap was closing and tried to bolt through the loading bay, but ran headfirst into a wall of federal agents, now flooding the facility. From the heart of the warehouse, Ethan raised his voice. "It's over." His words rang out like a gavel strike. "The real corporate audit team has been here for hours, documenting every detail, and those watches you were so eager to move, they're all tagged with hidden RFID trackers. We've mapped the entire operation electronically, from this floor to international drop points." Chen's hand began to tremble. His grip on the pistol wavered, the weapon no longer a shield but a symbol of desperation. In that breath of hesitation, Sarah moved. She swung a heavy inventory clipboard with all her strength, striking his hand and sending the gun skittering across the concrete floor. Agents swarmed. Chen was slammed to the ground and cuffed. Kane was dragged back into the center of the warehouse, forced to face the man he'd once mentored. His polished demeanor crumbled. "Ethan, please, I can explain. I was going to tell you I was gathering evidence myself. I just didn't know who I could trust." Ethan didn't flinch. "Save it for the federal prosecutors. They're especially interested in Project Echo and your little plan to hijack my company." Kane's skin drained of color. How did you—" "I learned from the best, Robert," Ethan said. "You taught me to observe, to watch quietly. I just never imagined I'd need to use those lessons against you." The next few hours blurred into chaos. Agents photographing evidence, employees whispering in shock, one by one watching as their once untouchable supervisors were led away in handcuffs. By the time the morning shift arrived, the warehouse had transformed into a crime scene. Ethan stood on a shipping crate in the main loading bay, surrounded by employees. But this time, he wasn't hiding behind glasses or grime. They pulled off the disguise. "My name is Ethan Caldwell," he said, his voice steady, "and I owe every one of you an apology." The warehouse fell silent. "I came here to investigate rumors. What I found was pain. Pain that I caused by trusting the wrong people, by being absent from the very ground my company was built on. That ends now." Some workers looked stunned. Others bowed their heads, ashamed at having mocked him, unaware of who he truly was. Sarah stood proudly at the front, hands resting on her belly, eyes shining with conviction. "Every corrupt manager will be prosecuted," Ethan continued. "But more importantly, every one of you who was cheated, out of time, out of health, out of dignity, you will be compensated. This company belongs to you too, and it's about damn time it started acting like it." The sun rose behind him, casting golden light across a building that had witnessed so much darkness. And in that moment, Ethan made a vow, not just to rebuild policies, but to rebuild culture. From the ground up, the transformation began immediately. Within weeks, every corrupt executive and manager was removed. Their positions were filled with workers who had proven their integrity when it mattered most. Sarah, now 6 months pregnant, sat across from Ethan in what used to be Kane's office. "I still can't believe you made me head of worker relations," she said, flipping through a proposal for expanded health benefits. "A few months ago, I couldn't even get permission to take a break." "Who better to protect worker rights," Ethan replied, signing the document, "than someone who lived through their violation?" He smiled, handing it back. "Besides, you're the only person I've ever seen disarm a man with a clipboard." The warehouse floor transformed. Gone were the blocked emergency exits and collapsing shelves. New equipment gleamed beneath bright, efficient lights. Clean air flowed through updated ventilation. But the real change wasn't physical. It was in their faces. Lisa, the young woman once denied medical leave, now ran the Safety and Health Committee. "Mr. Caldwell?" she called out as he walked through the loading dock. "The physical therapy program you approved, workplace injuries are down 90%. Miguel, the weary veteran, now trained new supervisors, preaching ethics, not intimidation. His hands no longer trembled. Proper breaks and sustainable hours had replaced caffeine and survival mode. One morning, Ethan held a different kind of meeting. No corporate slide decks, no buzzwords, just envelopes, compensation for stolen wages, health reimbursements, recognition for years of loyalty and unseen labor. But what mattered more was what he said. "When I came here undercover, I didn't just see corruption. I discovered the heart of my company." He looked across the crowd. "You are that heart, and from now on, we lead with it." Rick, the supervisor who had humiliated him with the pallet jack, asked to speak in private. "I was cruel to you," Rick confessed. "I thought acting tough meant being strong. But I became exactly the kind of man I swore I'd never become." Ethan placed a hand on his shoulder. "The past is the past. What matters now is the leader you choose to be. Are you ready to be the one you wish you had?" The board of directors balked at the cost of reform. Ethan stood firm. "Our profit margins might drop," he told them, "but our soul isn't for sale." He was right. Productivity soared by 40%. The company wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. Articles appeared in Forbes and Fast Company, not about luxury goods, but about Caldwell's worker-first revolution. 6 months after the arrests, Ethan launched a profit-sharing program. And every employee, from forklift driver to office clerk, received stock and quarterly bonuses. It was simple. If they built the success, they should share in it. The break room became a gathering space, birthdays, celebrations, honest conversations with management. A photo wall displayed families, smiles, purpose. On the anniversary of his first shift as James Turner, Ethan returned to the floor, this time not undercover, He rolled up his sleeves and worked side by side with his team, a tradition that every executive would follow moving forward. "You don't have to do this anymore," Sarah said as they packed inventory. "I do," Ethan answered, "because this reminds me what the company really is. You can't lead what you don't understand." The day ended with a surprise. The workers presented Ethan with the same battered pallet jack he'd once fumbled with on day one, now polished, mounted, and engraved with a plaque. "The boss, who walked in our shoes and changed the path for everyone." He looked around the room, at Sarah's proud smile, Lisa's relaxed posture, Miguel's calm hands, Rick's clear conscience. And he knew this company hadn't just survived corruption. It had rediscovered its soul. "A year ago," Ethan said, hand resting on the trophy, "I thought I came here to save my company. But you saved me. You reminded me what strength really looks like. It's not in spreadsheets or sales. It's in dignity, in courage, in standing up. Together." The warehouse erupted in applause. But Ethan lifted a hand. "This isn't the end, it's just the beginning. From this day forward, we show the world that success and humanity aren't opposites, that every worker, every voice matters." As the sun set, golden light spilled across the loading dock. Luxury goods sat neatly on shelves. But the real treasure wasn't the products. It was the people. And in a drawer of Ethan's desk, the old glasses and worn baseball cap remained. A reminder that sometimes you have to lose yourself completely to find what truly matters.